US President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan wins UN Security Council backing. A mixed reaction from Palestinians. The Palestinian Authority welcomes the resolution, but Hamas rejects it, along with plans for an international stabilisation force. So what's next? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finighan. US President Donald Trump's peace plan for Gaza has overcome a major hurdle. It's won the backing of the UN Security Council 13-0, with China and Russia abstaining. Trump hailed the move as historic, with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcoming it on X. But the Palestinian response has been divided. The vote was rejected by Hamas, but welcomed by the Palestinian Authority. The resolution's vague wording leaves much of the details yet to be worked out, in particular the International Stabilisation Force, which is to implement the plan on the ground. What countries will form it, who will fund it, and how the force will carry out its mandate are all unclear, as is how the people of Gaza will react to more troops deployed in the Strip, and whether Israel will comply both with the plan and with the new force. The role the US will play to ensure its deal is implemented will also be crucial. So what might happen next? We'll try to find out with our guests in a moment. But first, a report from Alexandra Byers.
With those in favour of the draft resolution, please raise their hand.
And with that, the United Nations Security Council approved the US ceasefire plan for Gaza, giving President Donald Trump exactly what he wanted: legal authority for his 20-point peace plan, including the deployment of an international stabilization force.
Today's resolution represents another significant step towards a stable Gaza that will be able to prosper and an environment that will allow Israel to live in security.
Trump was quick to celebrate, describing the vote as incredible and saying it would go down as one of the biggest approvals in the history of the UN. 13 members voted in favor, none against. Russia and China abstained, citing concerns, but didn't use their veto powers.
In essence, the Council is giving its blessing to a U.S. initiative on the basis of Washington's promises, giving complete control over the Gaza Strip to the Board of Peace and the ISF, the modalities of which we know nothing about so far.
While the Palestinian Authority backed the resolution, Hamas rejected it, saying it fails to meet the political and humanitarian demands of Palestinians. The group also argued the International Stabilization Force would not be neutral and would be a party to the conflict in favor of the occupying power, Israel. The resolution includes the establishment of a transitional administration called the Board of Peace. Led by President Trump, it will have authority over Gaza's governance, including public services and humanitarian aid, as well as reconstruction. But the wording is vague and doesn't define who is on the board. The International Stabilization Force will be made up of troops, not UN peacekeepers, and will work in consultation with Israel and Egypt to demilitarize Gaza and train a Palestinian police force. But it makes the issue of Palestinian statehood conditional on the PA implementing reforms and the redevelopment process advancing. And there's no specific commitment to the two-state solution. Israel's Prime Minister welcomed the resolution, but hours after it was passed, Israeli explosions echoed across Gaza, despite the ceasefire agreement, which the resolution says must be maintained in good faith and without delay. Alexandra Byers, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests. Rami Khouri is a distinguished fellow at the American University of Beirut. He joins us now from Phoenix, Arizona. Joining us from London is Ahmed Najar, a political analyst and writer who focuses on Palestine and the wider Middle East. And from Istanbul, joining us is Mehmet Celik, editorial coordinator at the daily Sabah, an English-language newspaper in Turkiye. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. Rami, let's start with you. As The Guardian put it on Tuesday, the resolution puts Donald Trump in supreme control of Gaza as chair of a board of peace, which will oversee a multinational peacekeeping force, a committee of Palestinian technocrats, and a local police force. And yet, as we were hearing in Alexandra's report, the makeup of all four bodies is yet to be determined. It is, The Guardian says, one of the oddest resolutions in the history of the United Nations. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah, it's not only odd, but it's very pro-Israeli, follows more or less what Israel wants, which has been part of the diplomatic and political process in Gaza for years. And it doesn't clarify exactly what's going to happen next. It's a very troubling resolution. But this is the balance of power in the world right now. The Western colonial imperial forces from the past are reasserting themselves now in a new form and with vague language, which, like in the past, allowed them to do anything they want. The key, I think, is going to be, will Israel stop killing Palestinians? Will it allow full delivery of the humanitarian aid that it was supposed to deliver when the ceasefire started, and it hasn't? And will it allow a serious Palestinian self-governing system to develop in the interim, in the 2 years, so that the Palestinians can get on with the business of rebuilding their lives? And critically, will Gaza be able to reconnect with the rest of Palestine to have a Palestinian whole political system that operates? The PA by itself is one of the most troubling aspects of this resolution because it has been an abject failure. And by the way, the issue of training police, the United States and others trained Palestinian police for the last 30 years after Oslo and all kinds of other situations. And they've only ended up producing a terrible Palestinian Authority police force that is essentially subcontracted by the Israelis to arrest Palestinians. So it has a lot of problems, but it's an ongoing process. And the critical thing now is to see what do the Russians and the Chinese do, and what will the forces that have been supporting Palestine, the Arab and Islamic countries, especially Turkey, Indonesia, Pakistan, and how will they and the Arab countries move ahead? And the meeting in the White House soon with the Saudi Prime Minister and Trump will be critical to clarify some of these things.
Rami, as always, you raise many interesting points. Hopefully we'll come to a lot of those in the rest of our discussion. Ahmed, while the resolution had been amended to mention Palestinian statehood, it did so in this vague conditional language, saying that if the Palestinian Authority reformed satisfactorily and the rebuilding of Gaza advances, then conditions might be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. I mean, what do you make of that?
Absolutely. I think it's always the language that they use to give them the room to maneuver and to do whatever they like in the future, and to show no real commitment to a Palestinian state or for the Palestinians to self-determination. I mean, it's fascinating that it's been for 75 years that they're talking about the case and avoiding the main issue, which is occupation, which is the giving the right for the Palestinians for self-determination. And they're willing to use any language but avoid the main issue. And we have seen it is very, very heavy on the security for Israel and the disarming of the Palestinian resistance, and very extremely vague on giving the Palestinians their rights and ignoring. And I mean, it's a bizarre one to me, really, because it ignores the very establishment of the United Nations Council, which is giving the Palestinian self-determination as well as the rights of return and Jerusalem and the blockade and many other issues that has been avoided. So it is very. That's why also the Palestinians are deeply suspicious of it, and not not all in behind it. So we'll see how it unfolds. But I don't feel that it will have much of a future to go down there without clashing with the Palestinians in Gaza.
Mehmet, What are we to make of the fact that this resolution passed 13 votes, by 13 votes, with Russia and China abstaining? And now Russia, earlier in the week, had wanted to put forward its own resolution with specific language on Palestinian self-determination. Why did it not proceed with that? Why didn't China and Russia veto the resolution and send it back to the drawing board if they were so unhappy with the wording and specifically the lack of UN participation in it?
Well, I think that rivalry, at the global level, is also reflected on this resolution itself. And I think, the fact that many did not, 13 did not veto or stand against this resolution, I think Russia and China did not want to come across a unified front, especially on Gaza when there is a huge humanitarian crisis. They didn't want to be the game changers or those who will break the game in that sense. I think, simply to say that. But I think when it comes to why Russia didn't proceed with their own resolution, that I am not sure. But I think there is still hesitancy, despite the fact that they voiced solidarity with Palestine when it comes to China and Russia. Still, that hasn't actually translated into some concrete action with regards to putting pressure on Israel, specifically vis-a-vis, when we compare that need for pressure to the solidarity that they have voiced with the Palestinian cause. And nevertheless, I think I agree with the previous two speakers that this resolution is very vague. It's big on headlines, but when it comes to this array of rays that are reflected, there is no reflection of that on the field itself. There is no, we talked about self-determination, but there's no mention of West Bank, as if the occupation does not exist there, as if the killing is not present there. And I think the many voiced support, the 13 raised hands saying yes to this, because there is still a hope that, some of this vagueness will be actually turn into some tangible results for the Palestinians in a way that if the ISF can become a force that will not only monitor the Palestinian side, but it will also have the influence on the Israeli side. And of course, that need to be combined with the United States to put pressure on Israel to stop, or at least to minimize the effect of Israeli violence in the occupied territories. I think they want to see that actually as a stabilizing force, rather than a force that will stand against Hamas and be protecting only Israeli security interests. And I don't think any of the, at least speaking for Turkiye, it would not want to be a force on the ground that would be imposing some or dictating some actions on Hamas to put down arms.
Rami, feel free to come back on that, but I just wanted to ask you about the response from Hamas, which rejected the resolution, saying that it fails to meet Palestinians' rights and demands. The plan imposes an international guardianship mechanism on the Gaza Strip, which our people and their factions reject. Assigning the international force with tasks and roles inside the Gaza Strip, including disarming the resistance, strips it of its neutrality and turns it into a party to the conflict in favor of the occupation. It has a point, doesn't it? And that response will do little to encourage Arab and Muslim nations to provide troops for this security force.
Yes, so this is really one of the most fascinating elements of this resolution. They approved, now they have UN legitimacy supporting it, and now they have to negotiate with the countries that will send the troops. Those countries have leverage in negotiating how they join the force. And this is going to be really a critical area where the supporters of the Palestinians and justice for all in Palestine and Israel will have a chance to say, look, we need to act in a way that responds to the legitimate legal rights of both the Israelis and the Palestinians. This resolution, like most of the other things that have come out of the U.S. in the last 2 years or in the last 50 years, lean towards what Israel wants, and they give lip service to what the Palestinians want. And the troubling part here is that the overall political dynamic and the diplomatic dynamic of this resolution mirrors and recreates in a new modern form the problems we had in 1917 when Great Britain went and did whatever it wanted in Palestine and essentially gave it to the Zionist movement, and in 1947 when the United States had to twist arms and threaten and bribe some small countries in the General Assembly to approve the resolution creating the State of Israel and partitioning Palestine. And here is the third reiteration of that dynamic, where Western colonial powers who are close to Israel assert their supremacy and military dominance by not only favoring Israel, but also by probably behind the scenes, the U.S. was telling the Russians and the Chinese, we haven't finished our tariff negotiations. It would help if you just abstained on this. I imagine that's one of the reasons that they did abstain. So this is a process. It's an ongoing process in which the U.S. and Israel have massive leverage, but the Palestinians and their supporters are not totally helpless. Hamas rejects it, of course, because it doesn't meet their demands, which have been consistent and long-standing and reflect all Palestinian and Arab demands for statehood, end of occupation, etc. So we just have to keep our eye on this. One of the things I've learned in covering this for many, many decades is that individual actions are always followed by other individual actions. There's be other opportunities to find out if the imbalance that is structural in this resolution, the bias in this resolution, can be ameliorated or adjusted for more favorable. For instance, the issue of when will the Israelis leave Gaza? What is this reform, this magic reform that the Americans are asking for? These are vague, and they can be negotiated. So we'll have to unfortunately, we just have to wait and see. But in the short term, the immediate priority is to improve the living conditions of the Palestinians, especially now with winter and the rainy season. And there's no sign of that either.
Ahmed, why have Arab and Muslim states, who are the very ones who are likely to provide the troops for this stabilization force, backed this resolution so wholeheartedly, which says, let me quote from it, that the International Stabilisation Force will ensure the process of demilitarizing Gaza, which rather suggests that it will have to take weapons away from Hamas, which, as we were hearing, has insisted that it's not going to disarm. This is a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
I think the Arab states and the Muslim states have voted while their backs against the wall. They have their people, boiling in because of the genocide in Gaza, as well as also they've been given promises from the U.S. and government. But also the sort of adjusting, for example, the credible pathway to a Palestinian state, to encourage these Arab countries and Muslim countries to vote. But I agree with you in terms of when it comes to practicalities and deploying forces, if they can't find a way to do that with the resistance in the group. And I want to mention that not only Hamas rejected this, also other resistance groups in Gaza have rejected this resolution. If they cannot find a way that they work with them, and I think that's the only way, then we will see, as I mentioned earlier, clashes with these international forces and the local resistance groups. And the fear is obviously to see these international forces as an army, as an occupation, which how it feels right now for the Palestinians is an extension for the occupation, is maintaining the status quo, is really about managing the occupation and the Israeli control over the Palestinians. So we will see how it unfolds. I hope that these forces, particularly the ones coming from the Arab countries, that and the Muslim countries try to find a way to work with the local authorities, such as Hamas and other resistance groups in Gaza, because that's the last thing the Gazans want to see, which is a clash between the resistance and the international forces.
Mehmet, let's talk for a moment about Israel's response to this. Prime Minister Netanyahu, as Alexandra was telling us, was positive, welcomed the passing of the resolution on social media, but only in English. His political opponents then mocking him, saying that he's obviously afraid of members of his own government and their supporters. Avigdor Lieberman, leader of a right-wing opposition party, said that the resolution is the result of mismanagement by the Israeli government. Then on Tuesday, Netanyahu called for Hamas to be expelled from the region, despite the resolution offering members of Hamas amnesty. What do you make of it?
Well, of course, despite Netanyahu being perhaps a dark name in history, there's those who are even darker than him when it comes to Israeli political landscape. And some of the ultra-nationalists and radical voices, they were, basically criticizing Netanyahu, saying that you are going to allow a stabilization force, basically, let them occupy Israeli land. That ideology, that idea behind how they see Israel, not only as a political entity within the current Israeli borders in the occupied territories, but also beyond that. I think they see Israel beyond what Israel is right now and the occupied territory. So for the fact that Netanyahu has agreed with this plan, be it through international pressure, be it for them to be a pause moment, or through U.S. influence, they see that basically as a moment that Netanyahu is backing away from further expanding. I think the problem here is that when you have an actor that seeks only instability, not only with the genocide in Gaza or other parts of occupied territories, it is very difficult to make sense of what they're even saying, let alone some sort of political dialogue, some sort of diplomatic relationship that you can build with them to solve a problem that has been a bleeding wound for the region for many decades. I think it is very difficult to understand that psychology that sees the expansion as the only solution to their own security problems that they create for not only for the Palestinians, but also for the Israeli themselves, and even beyond in other parts of the region. So I'm not, I'm having a difficulty making sense of different voices even emerging from Israel when it comes to this dialogue between ultranationalists, Netanyahu, and those who criticize them, saying that the method is wrong, but the ultimate aim is still a constant.
Rami, I just want to get your thoughts on something else that's vague in this resolution, and that's the issue of money. The resolution says the financing for reconstruction following 2 years of war should come from a trust fund backed by the World Bank. What do you make of that? Is there an argument that having caused the damage in the first place, Israel should be expected to pick up a large portion of the reconstruction bill? And could World Bank involvement mean that institutions responsible for rebuilding and running Gaza could end up going into debt, which will have to be repaid at some point in the future? I mean, it's nonsense, isn't it?
Yes, nonsense is a polite way of saying it. It's also criminal because they're trying to ignore their culpability and responsibility for everything that's happened. That not only the genocide of the last 2 years, where the United States has been an active and enthusiastic supporters, but also for creating much greater tensions all across the region, where the U.S. and Israel have been fighting against 5 or 6 different actors in the Arab world and Iran, and then now they come and they say, "Oh, we made this mess. Now the World Bank should take charge, and the Arabs should put up the oil money." And meanwhile, so this is the triumph of the carpetbaggers. This is the carpetbaggers like Tony Blair, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump, all these corporations that are going to come in and make tons of money now in the reconstruction and supply and all this. This is what carpetbaggers do. They come in a difficult situation. They talk nice. They make a lot of money, and then they go home. And this is unfortunately a part of the imbalance in power that we have had to live with for all of these years. But I still argue that there is a new element here, that at every stage of this process, there has to be some negotiated understanding. The troops now coming in, the stabilization force, the Palestinian government, there's just all of these elements, the withdrawal of the Israelis, the food, humanitarian aid, every one of these has to be negotiated. And if the groups the countries that are supporting the Palestinians and supporting international law can be a little bit more vigorous and have more backbone, I think this could be a very significant turning point in global relations between the North and the South. But just last point on the question you asked Mehmet about, or I can't remember which one you asked, but the Arab and Muslim majority countries, they don't really have sovereignty. They can't make sovereign decisions. They're so vulnerable to Western pressure. So this is a problem we have to live with as well.
Ahmed, we've got about a minute left. We've been quite skeptical on this program. We've sounded quite a negative tone. But as Rami said right at the beginning of the program, this is an ongoing process, and any process has to start somewhere. And at least this gets the ball rolling, doesn't it? I mean, is that perhaps the best way to look at this? It's far from perfect, but at least now we're moving forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely. It's one way of looking at it from a positive perspective, which is to end the killing, to end the genocide, and to start getting some materials into Gaza to start rebuilding the Gaza. And I guess that's the most important thing that coming out from this resolution is to allow building materials in, alleviate the suffering of the Gazans, and start some kind of returning some normality to the people of Gaza. That's definitely one of the most important things. The point that worries me as somebody from Gaza is dividing Gaza into green zone and red zone, and starting the construction in green zone and then leaving the Israeli control onto this zone, and then they marginalize the red zone, which might still be in the hands of Hamas or the resistance. So these are very big questions, and we're obviously extremely concerned about them. But also the point that it's very weird to me that the history kind of repeats itself, and they kind of think that we Palestinians will forget about the genocide and will let Israel get away with whatever they have done. That we want. We have not forgotten the Nakba 1948, and we will not forget about this. So the right way is justice to move forward.
Gentlemen, there we must end it. Many thanks indeed. Rami, Khouri, Ahmed Najar and Mehmet Celik for being with us today. And thank you for watching. You can see the programme again at any time by going to the website. That's at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, join us at our Facebook page. That's at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And of course, you can always join the conversation on X. Our handle there is at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian Finighan, and the team here in Doha, thanks for watching. We'll see you again. Bye for now.